Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Allison Zach, Executive Director of the Human Beaver Coexistence Fund based in Virginia. And I am thrilled to be the MC here in the Aspen Room this morning. Our next presentation, we have Madison Newton, April Rhodes, and Ariana Winkler presenting on Beavers and Community, a collective approach to beaver coexistence.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. Can you all hear me okay? I can't tell. Okay, great. Awesome. Thumbs up from the back. Thanks, guys. I'm April Rhodes. I'm a project manager with Beavers Northwest. And today we're talking about beavers and community.
Hi, I'm Ariana.
Hi, I'm Madison. I'm a project coordinator with Beavers Northwest.
I'm also a project coordinator for Beavers Northwest. I work part-time, and we'll go over it next. Who's talking about Beavers Northwest?
Okay, so all three of us are from Beavers Northwest. April and I are representing us today, and our mission is to increase acceptance and understanding of beavers to support healthier and more resilient ecosystems, and we'll go over that a little more. Next slide.
Next person. So I work part-time for Beavers Northwest. I work full-time for the Snohomish Conservation District. I hope you've heard a little bit about conservation districts, either at this conference or in your own state. But we are part of the government, but we're non-regulatory, and our mission is to work cooperatively with others to promote and encourage conservation and responsible use of natural resources. We do that through technical assistance and financial support for conservation practices, but we cover farm planning, urban conservation, stormwater solutions, youth and community education, habitat restoration, which I'm on the habitat team, and then beavers kind of intersect all of those different landscapes, and I run their Living with Beavers program, so when it's flooding a farm or urban or impacting our habitat, I try to coexist.
So at Beavers Northwest, we are a nonprofit, and we have 5 pillars of work, and those are technical assistance, research, education and outreach, habitat restoration, and technical consultations. And our main ones that we do our work through are technical assistance and education and outreach. And with technical assistance, our primary work is coexistence work with beavers. So we're installing flow devices, working with private landowners and public entities like municipalities to find solutions to beaver management. And we do a lot of education and outreach. We host summer nature walks pretty much every summer, at least right now, that are free to the public, just educating people, getting people excited about beavers in their community, on their landscape, and then also educating landowners and public entities about beavers on their land.
This presentation came out of many conversations, especially around our technical assistance. And as many of you have figured out at this point, most beaver dams are pretty messy to deal with. And it's not just because of complex regulations. It's not necessarily because of the messiness of wetlands in a literal sense. But as you heard Elisa talk about yesterday in her panel yesterday, that the biggest challenge for us often is actually the people side of things. We work with many different types of folks, some private, some public, but most of these calls that we get are specifically about maybe one parcel, too much, sorry, one parcel that that landowner is calling us in regards to, but oftentimes there's impacts felt upstream and downstream, and several people are affected. And so it's not just dealing with one particular landowner. Oftentimes we're dealing with their neighbors and stakeholders in the area that have an interest. Is this working still? Okay, great, awesome. So Elisa said she's sometimes a therapist between beavers and people. Sometimes we're therapists between people and people. So we have a lot of challenges that come out of it. And so we've been thinking more about how we can start a more collective approach and thinking of, not just one chunk of the landscape, but how can we have a more cohesive, collective, perspective when we're dealing with these projects.
Yeah, so April just talked about how it's messy, and that is why we want a collective approach. We also want a collective approach to really understand what beavers are doing on the landscape, on the riverscape, on the culturescape, within that body of water. And then we're also, our mission is to help people and to foster beaver coexistence. So we want to reach as many people as possible. So we want to help all landowners that we can, all land managers we can, up or downstream, that are having those impacts. And like April said, we are a therapist or middleman between a lot of landowners and land managers. So we want to improve communication, so we're not the only ones communicating. That's a lot for us to do when we just want to work with beavers. Really, I'm looking to foster more successful beaver coexistence practices, and that communication, coordination for maintenance and monitoring is all going to make coexistence better.
So I don't think we'll have as much time for discussion as we thought because we're having a hard deadline, but we're going to pose some guiding questions for y'all to reflect on, think about, hopefully have some time to discuss at the end while we're kind of going through some case studies. So the first guiding topic is legal implications, like privatization of waterways. Does anyone really own a stream, a river, wetlands, any waterway, and who is really responsible for, or really are we, for the beavers within those waterways? Waterways are really dynamic. They're not static natural features in ecosystems. So who is responsible for impacts felt up and downstream, especially when beavers are present, and really is anyone?
Another theme that comes up a lot for us is surrounding pro-beaver versus anti-beaver sentiments. So sometimes, there are two neighbors, one loves beavers and one doesn't want anything to do with them. They don't want them on their property or even near their property. So a couple times we've had issues with landowners not even wanting to touch their dam, but maybe their neighbor has a lot of impacts felt nearby. So is there a responsibility for us to get involved? That's kind of a gray area for us. If the landowner doesn't want to touch their dam, there's really not much we can do if it's on their property. And then, is it wise to promote beaver activity, in one area if there's another landowner just downstream that's maybe trapping them, or, there's lethal removal happening in the area? These animals, as we've all learned, move around a lot. So, and they will disperse at some point. So, we have to think more critically about that as well.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit, but neighborhood or neighbor communications, really community communications. We've dealt with a lot of contentious situations where, maybe one landowner is getting flooded or having negative impacts and another landowner doesn't want to do anything about it. And we, again, have to be that middleman. But really, we want people to communicate respectfully, listen to each other, and consistently talk to each other. So how do we promote that? And landownership changes a lot, but the beaver dam does not go away when a landowner changes. So how do we ensure that projects continue to be successful even if a new landowner comes in?
And then lastly, another theme is community organizing. So how do we increase this cohesive management? There are many groups in our Washington region that actually have already established themselves. There were some 501c3 groups, different home associations. Where do they fit into all of this? Sometimes they've already organized and we just have to, maybe talk to one representative of that group. If there's nothing there, is there something we can do to support that? And would landowners work together to fund coexistence or management strategies that will benefit everyone, even if it's not just on their particular property?
Okay, so we're going to jump into some case studies, and this is a project that Beavers Northwest has been working on for a few years now. And so there's a pretty large beaver dam on a neighbor's property. You can kind of see on the top picture, well, all of these pictures, but there's a main dam upstream, smaller dam downstream, and these were leading to a lot of water backing up towards an adjacent landowner's driveway, like you can see on that top picture. And this is the only access into their property. And so the landowners whose driveway was getting flooded threatened and did eventually sue this neighbor who has all the beavers and beaver activity on his property. And so we, Beavers Northwest, worked with the landowner and the neighbor to kind of meet these expectation guidelines set in their lawsuit. So we installed 2 pond levelers on the main dam and a downstream dam to keep beavers happy, maintain this pond, also maintain access to this landowner's driveway. And part of this was also installing 2 staff gauges that we and the landowners can actively monitor because there is a set water level within the lawsuit that needs to be maintained with these pond levelers. And so although on a positive note, at least right now, everything's working, everything's hopefully resolved, there are very contentious negative sentiments between these landowners still. And we're in a funky situation where we, as Beavers Northwest, kind of have to act as the middlemen where we may not really want to between these landowners.
Another case study that we thought would be relevant to this is one in which there is actually a lake that many private citizens own property along the shoreline of. So we actually took this project over from the local county to help manage beaver activity on the lake that was contributing to high water levels that were then impacting infrastructure. So we repaired an existing pond leveler device that had been installed years previously and was no longer functioning properly. And then we've since installed 2 new notch exclusion fences downstream, since beavers love to build along this lake outlet. But there's still this constant struggle of really neighbors, I think, being a little overzealous whenever they see a new dam or they see a device, and people aren't necessarily communicating to one another or to us when they're doing this work. And so it actually impairs our ability to really help them because we can't always go out and make sure these devices are functioning as intended when landowners are kind of just out there on their own doing all of this. And we don't hear about it until later. So there aren't any negative sentiments amongst landowners that I know of, but it's just kind of this disorganized system right now where no one's really communicating effectively with one another or with us, and so it makes it really hard for us to do our jobs and help them.
Oh, this isn't.
Sorry, it's me again. Hello. So this is actually another project where we have mostly been working with a local municipality. The biggest thing is really their boardwalk on this top right picture. They were having issues with that getting flooded, and the wood was rotting. So we installed a device to initially help reduce the water level there. There's a really passionate local stewardship group that cares a lot about this park, and they do a lot of work in that park to restore native plants and take out invasives. So they play a big part in this park. However, we don't contract with them. We contract with the city. And recently there's been turnover within the city, so our point person kind of disappeared on us, and we're still kind of waiting to figure out who our new point of contact will be. But there doesn't seem to be, again, great communication between that stewardship group, the city, and us. And beavers are pretty active here, and so we've had to do some adaptive management on our devices here. But it's one of those things where we're kind of put in this position where we're dealing with a group that we actually don't really contract with, but we're trying to make sure everyone's happy. So it's one that's still a challenge to us till this day.
Okay, we do have a cool video with this, so hopefully it's a break from us just talking at you and you staring at a screen. This is drone footage that was taken by the landowner, which is pretty cool. And I think within a minute or two, you'll see some beavers swimming in there too, which is kind of cute. So this is a newer site for us for Beavers Northwest. In a little bit, you can see a very large beaver dam that's about 8 to 10 feet tall, and it kind of looks like a waterfall during winter conditions. And so this is on a neighboring property, landowners upstream. You can kind of see the water backing up to these houses. We're experiencing exacerbated winter flooding more than usual, and they were almost flooded out of their house. And so on a positive note, luckily, which is rare for us, the neighbor and the landowners were actively communicating even before they brought us into the project about the whole situation, possible solutions. And Beavers Northwest, we came in, offered a solution, and we did get a permit approved to hopefully install a pond leveler. But in this sense, complications arose because no one wanted to fund or take responsibility for the project. So luckily, most of the project is being funded by, is this still on? I think so. Most of this is being funded by grant funding, but we are asking the landowners to make a contribution for us to come out and help maintain the pond leveler. And so they asked me to be the person to decide who should sign the legal paperwork and who should fund the project. Yes, I know. And I'm like, I'm not a lawyer, I'm sorry. Yes, and so, I mean, obviously I want to give them this advice, but unfortunately that's not something I can do. So I'm like, you all have to take that into your own hands. Luckily, they did solve it. But again, a funky one where luckily they were communicating, and honestly getting the permit and everything was pretty easy. But I almost had to act like a lawyer, which I am not good at.
Those three little dots were.
Oh, yeah. The little three things, those are beavers. And that's the dam, which really looks like a waterfall.
So we have another lake here. This lake, it's mostly private property once again. Everyone kind of has their slice of the pie that goes out to the center of this lake. But there's one private landowner who's legally responsible for maintaining that lake outlet. I think it's either in her title or her deed or something like that. But she's legally responsible to make sure nobody else is getting flooded, which is a lot to put on one property owner. But this outlet is actually really challenging for us to keep clear. We've done a lot of adaptive management here. We've done several adaptations to our devices here. As you can see in the video, Beavers outsmarted our device and one got in. We have footage of it on the top right corner, just hanging out right inside of our device. This is in a region where pond levelers, DFW is not able to or not willing to permit them, so we had to do a notch exclusion fence here. But even with installing like a second outer layer on our device, we've still had issues with beavers just packing material around. So we're still working to solve this one. But we've heard there's some threats right now where property owners are getting maybe a little tired of this and have threatened to sue the one that's legally responsible and owns the outlet. So that one's a challenge.
Also, fun note, I don't think you said this about them. We did work with the Tulalip tribes on this project. So before we came in and installed a device, beavers were trapped and relocated. When the beavers were getting in like that video, they came out and trapped again, and there was 15 beavers that they trapped out of here and relocated. So lots of beavers on this lake.
Yeah, so we also wanted to mention that because relocation is another strategy that we sometimes need to implement, especially when we're trying to adaptively manage our coexistence practices. And we are lucky to have partners like the Tulalip Beaver Project to relocate. So the next case studies are in Snohomish County with Snohomish Conservation District. This one is particularly interesting because it has a lot of different jurisdictions. There's the county, the city that controls the road just above this culvert, and private landowners that live really close to this creek that runs through this neighborhood. The city is doing a lot of development, and that road is actually new. That culvert that is being overwhelmed by that beaver dam is brand new, but obviously is not appropriate for the conditions. The city does not want to do anything. The county won't do anything because it's on private land, but the landowners are left to deal with the beavers and deal with how infrastructure is impacting their lands. Again, the district Beaver Coexistence practitioners are kind of acting as a therapist or a middle person to really try to find a solution that works for everyone. But I'm part of the government, so we work really slow. And you can tell in this bottom picture that beavers were actually burrowing in close to the home's foundation. So I don't know if you can see it, but the white there is not water, it's actually a house's foundation. My efforts, even though I was willing to help them with coexistence, were just too slow for them. They pursued their own actions. So at that point, we can only really provide technical assistance and hope that they do something good. Really a lot of people, but really only one stakeholder has the ability to make any change. This is a case where the neighbors or the property owner, this is a culvert, it's hard to see because beavers have blocked it. But the landowner loves beavers. They know that they're beaver believers. They know they have great impacts, great ecological benefits. So they did not want to touch the beaver dams. They would just want the beavers to live there. People upstream of them are getting flooded out. And again, they're blocking this culvert, which raises fish passage concerns and also concerns for the road that the culvert is under, which is the sole access for like 12 properties of the neighborhood. But because they just wanted to keep beavers and leave them alone, despite my recommendations of maybe doing a culvert exclusion fence for fish passage, they refused to work with us and refused to listen to their neighbors' concerns. And since I need landowner permission to do any type of coexistence, I'm not able to help this community. So legal action was threatened, and this is just another really good case where communication is hard because there's some contentious feelings. This is another case where the stream is much too close to houses. You can see the house there, and this is the stream. This impacted a couple different neighborhoods, so that this stream is actually an outlet from a lake, a small lake. The beavers have dammed, because it's so narrow and so long, they've dammed, I think at one time I counted 7 dams on just this creek alone, because it's an outlet of a lake that was raising water levels, impacting septic systems, and also getting close to homeowners' houses. So the community was actually really good at organizing themselves. They had community events with the district, with the county, with Beavers Northwest, or the city, not the county, to really try to discuss solutions and listen to people's concerns. They were also very active in trapping and removing dams by themselves. So I just wanted to highlight it because it was a good way of a community coming together and organizing and trying to find a solution, even if a solution wasn't really found. There are a couple coexistence solutions that are working. We have a nice culvert exclusion fence that Beavers Northwest continues to maintain, and we have a lot of tree protection. But our culvert exclusion fence was difficult to maintain with the landowners because they were so adamant about beavers not having a dam there, even though we were trying to coexist with that dam. Anyway. Yes. And then I just have one more really quick. It has a cool video, and I just wanted to end with a positive note. This is a homeowners association listening to their neighbors' concerns and actively communicating and monitoring. Just when I was at this conference, I got an email from both the neighbor and the homeowners association saying, can I please come out soon for some adaptive management? So again, adaptive management is always needed for these, and eventually they may work. Oh, you got it. Okay. So now we have some just closing questions and maybe a little discussion.
Yeah, I think we've got 7 minutes for discussion. So we kind of want to turn it over to you all because we don't necessarily have all the solutions to all of these challenges. So we'd love to hear from everybody else and all of your expertise and your success stories. So if you have any success stories of like what's worked for you, we'd love to hear it. You can also send us a message in the app. But we've kind of been asking ourselves, does there need to be more policy change around shared water bodies? What would more outreach look like if we could kind of get ahead of some of these challenges and reach out to communities before things do get tense or contentious? How do we build capacity for facilitating coordination and communication between these different stakeholders? Who's ultimately responsible for that? Because once again, we get calls from individual landowners for the most part, rather than large collective groups of people who share a shoreline or a body of water. So, did you have something to add, Ariana?
Yeah, and we just don't have capacity to also implement these coexistence practices and try to communicate between so many landowners and navigate that all. So, is that our responsibility as coexistence practitioners? Or how do we improve that? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So at your tables, if you could get together and meet your neighbor, and maybe try to respond to one of these or all of these if you have any thoughts on that, and then we'll come back together with like a final minute and see if anyone is willing to share out. Thanks.
You guys didn't bring your stickers?
No. I think I might have them in my backpack. Let me look.
What time should we have people come back? Like 10:38, maybe?
Yeah.
3 more minutes?
Sure. It's okay. I don't think everyone's gonna want a sticker.
Michael. I think Michael. Nothing. Sorry that I was like eating the mic. I couldn't hear myself.
You're not very loud. Good job.
Thanks. I'm usually pretty loud.
Yes, of course.
Oh yeah.
Here we go. And if people want to like contact me.
Oh, you guys are so prepared.
Oh shoot, I have a couple of shit.
I didn't even think to bring like my business cards. I felt stupid.
I didn't, but they were already in my wallet. So I am kind of excited.
I think we did that with just enough time. I feel good about
Yeah,
timing.
I feel like I ended it.
Oh, and I have some.
Yeah, I think at 10:38 maybe we'll kind of go back.
We did get one question in the app. When you have conflicting interviews, who paid for the mitigation work?
Oh, that was probably the one I was talking about.
Yeah. I think typically it's who's ever the property owner, right? Or no?
Yeah, but in Maple Falls, it was the people who were being affected by the flooding. So again, that's another thing where I'm like,
Yeah.
It's up in the air.
yeah,
We don't have the answer.
I'm tripping on it. Or
You want to come over here?
no, it's okay. Caught on my foot.
Okay, it's like 34 seconds.
Yeah. Are you guys going to walk? We'll talk about it.
I'm gonna go hallway and then we'll
Yeah, yeah.
I'm staying in here. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna get out. But looks like it's children.
Yeah, it is. They're
Oh,
going next, which is so fun.
8th grade.
Love it. The hats yesterday were so cute. I kind of wanted one. The hats people were wearing.
I wish we could have a discussion tonight. Hopefully people have nice things to say.
Yeah. I think we have turns 38.
Yeah.
2 minutes for sharing out.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's in your hand.
Okay, it's been, we have like 2 minutes to share out. And then before we forget, we do have some stickers up here if you like them, Beavers Northwest stickers and like 3 SCD stickers, and some business cards. Does anyone want to share out first?
In the back.
In the back, I'll go back there. Yeah. I didn't really see who it was though. Keep going. Was it you? Oh, yeah. Yeah, great.
So our school just recently had a success story happen with the local creek with a few beavers. We're presenting like in 2 minutes or relatively soon, and we'd like to invite all of you guys to stay and hear about it because it's a really great story.
Thank you. Joe, our plant, has anything to say?
Yeah, it's complex. I mean, it's hard to have, a one-size-fits-all answer to any of this. So I think hopefully through conversations like this, we can come to some ideas. And I saw there was, I think, at least one question in the app that asked about who paid for this maintenance. I think in the example that we shared, it was actually the landowners being affected by the flooding. But I would say most of our projects, I think it's typically the landowner whose property has the dam on it. But we don't have the right answer to that either. So, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think we're at our time limit now. If anyone wants to share really quick, we can come up to any three of us and talk to us. We would love to hear any advice, any success stories, or comment on the app too, and we can answer questions or chat with you. Sorry we didn't have more time for discussion.